people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. It was announced earlier today that up-and-comer Crystal Rosado will be returning to action on the undercard of Serrano vs. Cruz early next year on the 3rd in her native Puerto Rico, fresh off the loss to Sharita Metcalf, the controversial loss that I still don't understand. Sporting a professional record of 7 wins with 1 loss and no draws, 2 knockouts, what should be an 8-0 record. 7-1 now as a result of that controversial decision. Such is often the case when it comes to Sharita and her style of fighting. Sharita is best described as a long and limber pure boxer that likes to move, likes to jab, and can be pressured, can be broken down. And that's what I saw in the fight with Crystal Rosado. Yeah, Sharita's getting in with a few straight punches here and there, but she's also getting backed up and backed off by Crystal Rosado, who's getting in with punches of her own, combinations of her own, snapping Sharita Metcalf's head back. I, for the life of me, don't understand how Sharita won that fight, how she won the Miyo Yoshida rematch, or the Melissa Odessa Parker fight. And all 3 of those fights had the same aesthetic. They all played out the same way. You have one fighter coming forward, pushing the other fighter back, being aggressive and landing punches, and somehow Sharita got the decision in all 3 fights. I really don't think it helped Crystal that that fight with Sharita was in Texas, and Sharita is from Texas. What a coinky-dink. So now she's on the bounce and set to return to action early next year. Is it going to be a rematch with Sharita Metcalf? I'm not sure, because I don't think Sharita wants to give her one. Crystal's opponent has not yet been officially announced for the coming calendar year, so we don't know who she's going to be fighting, though even if she can't get that rematch with Sharita, it's not the end of the world. People know what they saw. They know who should have won. And young Crystal is only 23 years old with her whole career ahead of her. More than enough time to rebound off this loss. It also helps that Amanda Serrano is her mentor. And Amanda Serrano, like Crystal Rosado, suffered a loss very early in her career, but that loss did not stop her from going on to become one of the most decorated women fighters the sport has ever seen. So it's hardly the end of the world that Crystal lost her last fight. Quote-unquote lost her last fight. That last fight was fought at 118 pounds, the bantamweight division, but young Crystal has fought as low as 115. I wonder, will she return to Superfly or continue as a bantamweight? For what it's worth, she's looked formidable at both weights, so it's really her choice. In any event, she's set to return to action early next year on the undercard of Serrano vs. Cruz on the rebound, and I'm looking forward to seeing her box again.
I already get accused. I said something I thought was incredibly complimentary about Jake and last night on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I got a bunch of people telling me, "Oh, you're a hater." I said, "How is this hateful?" I said that this is exactly what he does great. He builds his brand.
Right.
He develops a following. I mean, every fucking combat sports star, boxing, MMA, celebrity, influencer is the second he needs an opponent, they're all banging their fucking drum. Right?
Begging.
That's not begging.
Yes.
Like fucking like they got no begging on their knees, like weak, like begging.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's doing something right. Jake and Akisa are doing something right.
Right.
They built something. By the way, they built it the same way the ease at which Turkey came in to be a gigantic force.
MVP can be a gigantic force. It can become one at a time where the PBC is in a weakened state. We still don't know what's going to happen with Top Rank in the coming calendar year. MVP is doing more and more shows, and they've partnered up with Netflix. They actually brought Netflix to the table. Whether you like Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian or not, you have to admit they know what they're doing, and they're good at it. Upon Jake's foray in the sport of boxing over 5 years ago, who would have thought that over 5 years later, he would still be here, not just fighting, but actually promoting shows, promoting fighters, familiar faces, elevating the sport of women's boxing. Who would have thought over 5 years ago that we'd be here now? Lou Dibella is right. He's got these guys eating out of his hand, whether you're talking about mixed martial artists or legitimate boxers, decorated ones. As soon as Jake Paul is in the market for an opponent, they're forming a line, single file, hoping they can be the next ones to win the golden ticket. Now, it's important to note that a part of this is Jake is a novice. Jake is not actually that good a boxer. Not to them. To them, he appears low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit that pays out a lot of money. It's that rare situation where there's no risk and a high reward. You don't often see that in the sport of boxing. Low risk, high reward? That is how they view him. And that's why Jake Paul, in spite of only having a few professional fights, many of which weren't even against legitimate boxers, he's become a force, whether you like him or not, whether you like his fights, his events or not. Jake Paul has established himself as a formidable adversary to the established game in town. He, after all, brought Netflix to the table. Understand. Take that into account. The PBC has been searching for a new broadcast partner for close to 2 years now. Upon Showtime's departure from the sport, they said it then, that they would be looking for another broadcast partner to fill that void, since Amazon isn't really doing that. And you notice that Netflix didn't decide to work with them. They didn't decide to work with the PBC. They didn't decide to work with Top Rank either, even though they've been in the market for a new broadcast partner for months now. It wasn't either of those established promotional outfits in boxing that brought Netflix into the boxing space. No, it wasn't them. It was Jake. That's a big fucking deal. They're gonna work with him on his next fight, in spite of the collapse of the Gervonta Davis fight, mostly because it's Gervonta Davis's fault. You put that on Jake, that Gervonta Davis has a penchant for slapping up women. MVP's next move in the coming calendar year, if things continue to be the way they have been for the PBC, and they're reduced to only doing 5 to 6 shows a calendar year, that leaves a vacancy that MVP can fill with their own shows, with their own cards. And the same applies to Top Rank. If they don't land on their feet in the coming calendar year with a new broadcast partner to give them a budget, if they don't get back to doing shows as frequently as they used to, that also leaves a vacancy that MVP can fill. An expanded view of such a situation, ultimately boxers are going to go to whoever has the money and whoever has the fight dates. And if the PBC don't have them, and if Top Rank doesn't have them, and MVP does, what do you think is going to start to happen? It helps a lot that they've partnered up with not just Netflix for their bigger cards, but they also work with DAZN for their smaller ones, their MVP Prospects series. It really is the way that Lou said it is. Whether people like him or not, he knows what he's doing. He's built a brand. His name has become attached to some of the biggest attractions in the sport. Anyone from Gervonta to Canelo to Anthony Joshua in the coming calendar year. In the 5 or 6 years that have followed, Jake's foray into the world of boxing, he has established himself as a somebody, whether you like him or not. In men's light heavyweight news, former undisputed unified champion Dmitry Bivol only wants big fights upon return. Eyes Canelo, Benavidez, Beterbiev, Opetaia. Dmitry Bivol is on the mend and recovering from surgery to repair a herniated disc in his back. The ring and unified light heavyweight champion Bivol aims to return to the boxing ring in the first quarter of next year. When he does, Dima doesn't want to take the path of least resistance. I met with Dmitry and had dinner with him recently, Matchroom Boxing head Eddie Hearn told The Ring. The big thing and key with him is that he just wants big fights, big money, and true tests. David Benavidez and Artur Beterbiev are true tests, but they are very dangerous fights. He's a chill guy, but he's not interested in a random fight. He wants Canelo Alvarez, Benavidez, Beterbiev, maybe Jai Opetaia. He just wants the challenges. I'm sure we'll have him back in a big fight soon. Bivol just fought once this year. The 34-year-old Russian avenged his 2024 majority decision defeat to Beterbiev in February by unanimous decision, becoming the undisputed champion at light heavyweight. heavyweight. By April, Bivol would end up vacating his WBC title instead of pursuing a fight against interim champion David Benavidez because it was believed at that time that Bivol would face Beterbiev in a trilogy. In July, the IBF ordered Bivol to face mandatory challenger and number 1 ranked contender Michael Eifert, who'd been waiting for his shot at the big time for roughly 2 years. And by August, Bivol went under the knife to take care of the lingering back injuries that had been nagging him for nearly 10 years. Bivol is the ring's number 4 ranked pound-for-pound fighter and was the 2021 Fighter of the Year after beating Canelo and Zurdo, both by unanimous decision. So what is the probability that Canelo versus Bivol once again becomes a topic? Let's go through these opponent options by order. From least likely to most likely, I can tell you here and now that I never thought we'd see a Canelo versus Bivol rematch. I don't think that happens. Now, least of all, that Canelo is coming off a loss to Terence Crawford. Get Canelo out the picture. That shit ain't gonna happen. If Canelo wanted a rematch with Dmitry, he would have had it by now. After all, he's the A-side, he's the one cause of shots, and if he wanted to avenge the loss, he would have. He would have tried to by now. Next on the docket is David Benavidez, rather the winner of Benavidez versus Yard. What is more likely to happen than a Canelo-Alvarez rematch, but still has some obstacles, some hurdles, because what if David Benavidez loses? Then Yard gets the golden ticket, and that's if there's not a rematch between them. Between Anthony and David. Fight's right around the corner, but it's a fluid situation to where it's not really a guarantee that Dmitry gets the winner of that fight. He might. If Anthony wins the fight, if David wins the fight, yeah, sure. He might fight Dmitry for undisputed. He might do that, or he might move up to cruiserweight. What about Turkey LL Sheik saying that he wants to put David Benavidez in the ring with Artur Beterbiev next year? What about that? And what if that happens? And what if David loses? And you start to see what I'm getting at, that there are a lot of different scenarios, a lot of what ifs. At least one includes Artur Beterbiev, another name on the docket. Of course you could make a trilogy fight with Dmitry Bivol, but what if Artur fights David next year, and what if Artur loses? Get the fuck out of here. I'm not saying that he will. I'm just entertaining every scenario to characterize how fluid and immaterial this situation is. There are a lot of what ifs. I remember that Vadim Kornilov, not but 2 or 3 weeks ago, said that Dmitry Bivol would be back in the first quarter of next year in a tune-up fight, an easy one, given that he's had back surgery. That's what I'm really expecting, to be honest, but Eddie Hearn's account of events, it is different. It's all big nights and big lights, big dicks. Whoa! Big names like Canelo, like David Benavidez, like Artur Beterbiev, Jai Opetaia. He mentioned Jai Opetaia, not the first time we've heard those two names attached. Dmitry Bivol versus Jai Opetaia. I remember some months ago, Turkey wanted to put that fight together, and maybe they will. But it's not something I think happens in the near future. I don't think Dmitry Bivol is on the eve of moving up to cruiserweight. Maybe 2 to 3 fights from now. Maybe in a year and a half. But I would table that conversation, at least momentarily. Even if the situation is highly immaterial, involving every single one of these names, some of them are still more realistic than others for the not-so-distant future.
I sparred Bivol a lot of times, so I mean I know that would be a great fight. The last time I sparred him, I heard him back in the 4th round. But he's a great fighter. I don't take nothing away from him. The last time I sparred him, I was 22 years old, so that was about like 6 years ago. But I remember that, you know, there are some opportunities I could take advantage of in Bivol. But he's a good fighter, you know. Overall, he's a great fighter. I definitely, you know, have to train hard for that training camp and be ready because he comes to fight.
So David Benavidez is once again recapping what was a sparring session from a long time ago where he says he got the best of Dmitry Bivol, that he hurt him.
You believe that?
Well, the way that David Benavidez every so often brings up that sparring session, I'm inclined to believe it happened because he seems very happy with himself, very proud of what transpired in that sparring session. So I don't doubt that it happened. I doubt its significance. David Benavidez himself said it. We're looking at a sparring session that took place approximately 6 years ago. Well, 6 years ago, Dmitry Bivol was about 15-0, where David was 20-0. Dmitry, He didn't have a lot of fights at that time. Not a lot of pro experience at that time. David actually had more fights and thus more rounds in the bank than Dmitry did. So if you tell me that David had a good round or a good session with Dmitry at or around that time, I can believe it, but that was 6 years ago, and this is tantamount to another gym story. Another gym story. 6 years later, Dmitry Bivol has shared the ring with the likes of former champion Jean Pascal, former champion Joe Smith Jr., both hard punchers, both pressure fighters. Since then, he shared the ring with the likes of Zurdo Ramirez, a former champion who moved up in weight like David Benavidez moved up in weight. He also is a pressure fighter. And of course, the two fights with Artur Beterbiev, who's not just a pressure fighter like those other guys are pressure fighters, he is arguably the biggest puncher this division will have seen in the last decade. So that when I try and envision a fight between Dmitry and David, I'm quite confident that Dmitry can deal with the pressure and the size and the volume of a David Benavidez. If history is any indicator of things to come, Dmitry can beat a pressure guy. He's already beat a few pressure guys, most of which hit harder than David. David's power at 168 does not seem to have carried up to 175. He hasn't knocked anybody out as a light heavyweight. Whatever he did in a sparring session 6 years ago, 6 years later, it's kind of irrelevant. I believe that a fight between Dmitry and David would look a lot like the fight that Dmitry had with Zurdo Ramirez. Similar height, similar length, similar methodology. I will say that David is a bit faster within close quarters. David puts his punches together a bit faster than Zurdo Ramirez does in the pocket, but he also gets hit in the pocket quite a bit. I think Dmitry Bivol would dominate the exchanges, dominate the pocket with David Benavidez. In truth, the only thing I see David has working for him is that currently Dmitry is coming off of back surgery. He needs a tune-up fight. He is in his mid-30s. But because Vadim Kornilov, Dmitry Bivol's longtime manager, stated weeks ago that they plan on getting him a tune-up fight early next year, the back surgery, recuperating from all of that, it may not be an issue. It may not be a problem. If Dmitry has a tune-up fight in the first quarter, and he goes on to face the winner of Benavidez versus Yard at the end of the second quarter, or sometime in the third, that is the ideal schedule. And on that schedule, I would still favor Dmitry to beat David Benavidez. There is nothing so unique about David Benavidez as a fighter, his methodology. Nothing so devastating that Dmitry can't deal, that Dmitry can't handle him, that if history is any indicator of things to come, David is just another pressure fighter, and Dmitry knows how to deal with pressure fighters. We've seen that already. My biggest question is whether or not the fight will happen. After the Yard fight, if David wins, depending on how he wins, does he stay at light heavyweight or does he move up to cruiser? Because he's been talking a lot about that. So is Zurdo Ramirez. There's been a lot of chatter about a David Benavidez versus Zurdo Ramirez fight. PBC and Golden Boy Promotions jointly could put that together like they're putting together the Ryan Garcia versus Mario Barrios fight. So that's my biggest question. Is David going to fight Dmitry? We'll see.